There's a moment in Bloodsport that's iconic, and you know what I'm talking about, the crotch punch.
Right.
The crotch punch is one of the most iconic moments. Let's take a look. That's fantastic!
Yeah.
That would hurt.
Is that something I could use in real life, or is that just for movies?
Oh, it was cinematic. The idea came on the set since I was very flexible. I said, what about if I go on the split position and I go inside the legs?
Right.
But you know what? In fighting combat, I mean, I know they have rules and this and that and techniques, but if you're very aware of your body and your capability, like he's tall, you're more stocky, I'm more thin, so we have to think how we can protect ourselves with our ability.
Right.
Then we can be very, very dangerous.
Yes.
More than anybody on, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Well, yeah.
So in Bloodsport, all those
And
moves
you can also punch someone in the dick.
Yeah.
Right.
And that works regardless of your body type.
Right.
Yeah.
I am from beyond. Listen, and all you desire will be yours. Welcome to Spider-Dan and the Secret Balls. Prepare for Prattle.
Choose a side in a Clone Wars.
Welcome to Prattle World. I am your host, the ever-amazing, ever-spectacular Spider-Dan. And in this podcast, I spotlight entertainment's best-kept secrets that a mainstream audience may find boring. And welcome to Clone Wars, where two similar pieces of media clash to be crowned champion. Two go in, and only one comes out. And today, we have a historic episode. Two titans of the podcast industry, the podfathers themselves. They've got all of the podcasts, the reality shows, The Office, the VHS Strikes Back, and, you know, all the other comics in motion stuff, the head honchos, the guys who run it all, the backbone and the big hairy bollocks of Comics in Motion. Here today to talk some high-flying, high-kicking, high-splitting Jean-Claude Van Damme films. So it is my honor and privilege to introduce Chris Phelps and Dave Horrocks. Welcome to the show for the very first time. It's been a long time coming, but I'm glad you guys made it.
Thank you very much, Dan. And I'm glad you said big bollocks because I haven't got a big cock. So thank you for having me on the show.
You've got to make up for it in some areas, haven't you?
Oh, it's the nose, as you can see on camera. But yeah.
You're going to say you are a big cock. You know.
Some would, thanks, Dave. Some would say that.
But thanks for having us on, mate. It's been a long time coming, hasn't it? We've been trying to get this one sorted, and then we finally had a date, and then it was like, oh, no. We got to do it.
I think we all cancelled it at one point. We were all like, "Oh no, I've got to cancel it. We've got to cancel." But that's been my year this year. As I can't pin down anybody to record. It's just been a nightmare. But we're here and we're ready to talk Jean-Claude Van Damme. We're talking. You've covered one of these films on VHS? Is that right? You do Kickboxer?
Bloodsport.
Have we not done Kickboxer?
No.
Did you do both?
Oh.
Could you have done both?
Definitely done Bloodsport. I didn't realise we hadn't done Kickboxer. We'll have to
now you
rectify
are.
that soon.
Now you are. I mean,
done Death Warrant.
Death
and I
Warrant
did
was good.
Double Impact by mistake.
Yeah, what's the wrong one?
Of course, yeah. You watched the wrong one. I mean, to be fair, like again, we're going to go into this. Yeah, some of his films are quite similar. You know,
how foreshadowing there.
Yeah.
How many films does he play himself twice? You know, Time Cop. I think Double Impact, is that the one with the twins? Double Impact.
Yeah.
The Replicant. That's him as well, playing himself again. He's got a few tropes he likes to. Well, I think he just likes he likes himself and his body a lot, and that's on. There's more nudity from him in these films than the ladies, which is quite surprising. But he's European.
The legend.
The legend. But yes, we won't hang around too much. But What are your kind of feelings on Jean-Claude Van Damme in general? I know you're a fan, but is there any strong emotions you have behind it? Didn't you go meet him at a convention recently?
Yeah, it was up in Liverpool or Manchester.
Manchester.
It might have been
Dave, don't
Manchester.
confuse them.
Sci-Fi Comic Con.
Of
Got
course,
to meet him. Now, I am a little bit vertically challenged, it has to be said. So I'm not actually that tall, but I was taller than him, which was a huge surprise. And Dolph Lundgren was there as well. Now, he was huge, which you expect him to be, but I didn't quite realize how short he was. Obviously, he's a little bit older now, but, it's still brilliant. I mean, I love this guy since seeing him in those late 90s movies. And his light burned really brightly for a really short amount of time in between late 80s and early 90s. And then he did a whole load of duds after that. But, that was enough to make an impression on me. And so, yeah, he's an absolute hero of mine.
And I think I'm the same. When we did Bloodsport, we both talked about this, Dan, was like, for me, I love Bruce Lee and I respect Jackie Chan. I'm not a Jackie Chan fan, but I watch the Bruce Lee films. However, Van Damme, probably for our age group, Van Damme was the man for me. He's like my all-time martial arts hero. Love the films. I think aesthetically, as much as I love Arnie and I grew up loving all his stuff and that, and Pumping Iron and things like that, I think Van Damme's got the best on-screen body I've seen in movies. Like, we're going to go down a weird rabbit hole, but the legs.
I was going to say,
there's
a fair bit of homoeroticism.
Yeah,
so,
in the undies when he slips the reporter one and stuff in Bloodsport, legend. But no, I just love these films. They were always the sort of movies I could get away with blagging my grandparents to rent out because there wasn't really any sex or anything. It was just pure violence and always the same trope that he lived in Belgium or France, and that's why he had an accent. So his brother, who was American or wherever they were from, and that's why they'd always drop a line in, which he does in both these movies about his upbringing and everything. So it was classic. Laying the table for Van Damme. There's always got to be a line about how he was in. Like the French army, or he was
Foreign Legion.
Foreign Legion. There was always something. Double Impact. We got split up as kids, and I lived in France and all this stuff. So yeah, I'm fully aware that you have to have that in some of the movies. But absolutely, like Dave said, absolutely loved all these movies as a kid. The 80s to about early 90s. That was for me when he was at his best, and then he did some proper duds after that. But I still watched quite a lot of them. So yeah. Love him.
Yeah. I think Time Cop's probably one of his best. I think for me, like I think that just fires on all cylinders for me. The sci-fi, the time travel, and again, Jean-Claude bringing it. What's he say? There is never enough time to please a woman.
He's from Rooker.
Is he Draco's brother?
That was my attempt. There's never enough time to please a woman.
It's Borat
now. You wouldn't know this, but I was a trained actor for 10 years, a professional. People paid me for that stuff. But yeah, Belgian's probably out my wheelhouse in accents anyway. But before we start talking about either film, we have to talk about the reasons why we're comparing the two films. So I have a list here. Feel free to add your own, guys, if you can think of any as we go or just after. Both films were either produced or distributed by Canon Films. Both star Jean-Claude Van Damme in the lead role. Both films were released within a year of each other. Both films see the characters being reluctantly trained by an Asian martial arts instructor with very similar BDSM-style training methods. Both films are set in East Asia. Both films were produced by Mark Nassau. Both films feature songs by Stan Bush and scores by Paul Herzog. Both feature dialogue explaining away Van Damme's accent. And both final fights see the protagonist's fighting skills hampered by a handicap. Both films star Michael Kissy, a close friend of Jean-Claude Van Damme, as Paredes and Tong Po in Kickboxer. Both films feature multiple montages. Both feature similar sadistic villains who both put someone that the hero is close to in the hospital. And both films made around $50 million at the box office. Anything else, guys? Anything else you want to add or can think off the top of your head?
Well, not quite off the top of my head, but I was watching Bloodsport last night and I did see John Chung pop up. I did pop it in our little chat
yes.
there. So start of Snake in the Monkey's Shadow. So he appears in the tournament. He gets his ass whooped, to be honest, in this one. In Bloodsport, that is. And then he's a stunt coordinator in Kickboxer as well.
Amazing. There we go. I've got a few others that I'll kind of drip throughout as well when I remember them. Some people may not have seen Bloodsport. I know it's incredible to you two that some people may not have ever watched Bloodsport. I know Mike Burton hasn't seen half the films we have, so he might need an introduction. So, Chris, could you give us a synopsis for Bloodsport?
Well, FrankDux decides he's going to rob someone's house with his friends. Now, this is a Chris Phelps synopsis. This isn't a Dave Horrocks, written perfectly. This is just me on the fly. But basically, FrankDux, as a young teenager, decides to rob a house, which is actually his master's house. His son decides to kick the shit out of him because he's tried to rob and burgle the katana sword, which he's not really. He's trying to put it back because he's got respect. For some reason, that shows signs of a warrior and decides he's going to train him under his tutelage. And then, unfortunately, his master becomes ill, and the only thing he can do is leave the army, become, go AWOL, basically, hence the link to another film they did called AWOL, or as some call it, Lionheart, and then decides to go in the Kumite. So that would probably what I would say. And he has to do the classic death touch to gain entry. When his mate, who looks like a trucker, the DMAC, his mate, who looks like a trucker and then fucking extra from over the top, gets entry straight away, even though he looks like the least person you've had a fight in his life. But there's no question about him because he's just an obnoxious American. He gets inputs. For FrankDux to actually get into the Kumite, he's got to pull this once in a lifetime punch off. So I hope that's a great synopsis, Dan, because on the fly.
No, very good. I think that was pretty well kind of explained, I think.
Blagged
Blagging it. So basically, think Enter the Dragon, but with Jean-Claude Van Damme, basically, in so many ways. Or more, well, I mean, this film actually, not only did it inspire the UFC, it actually inspired Mortal Kombat as well. These were direct inspirations for those two multimedia massive empires, and that's incredible considering it's all bullshit.
Love it.
So I don't know if Dave, do you want to talk about the man himself, FrankDux, who is based on a true story, quotations. What do you know about Mr. Dukes?
Well, so this is almost a trilogy of emotions about the man himself. So when I've watched this movie as a kid, and you get to the end and you see his amazing record, and the fact, oh, wow, this is a true story, this is unbelievable. Chapter 2 get to about the late 90s, and I remember I was studying kung fu at the time and doing some outside training sessions, and Darren, my sparring partner, was saying, we got on to talking about Bloodsport, and we were talking about FrankDux, and it's like, oh, FrankDux says like Jean-Claude Van Damme's a ballet dancer. He's not actually good at fighting at all. And then you're thinking, oh, Van Damme is a massive fake. And then, a few years ago, and I think leading up to our Bloodsport review, we started researching it, and all this shit had come out that actually it was him who was Bertie fucking bullshitter. And it's just like, you go from, everything I believe for most of the majority of your life, it's all bullshit. And then you start thinking, what a scam, what an absolute bullshitter. And wow, that is amazing to have that imagination. And the trouble is, when he's coming up with all this bullshit, right, the internet isn't around. Or it might be in some university or something, but no one's ever heard of it outside of that circle. So he's not thinking that the information age is coming and he's going to get trapped in his lies and, recount his own record incorrectly. I think the first time he said he had so many wins, he drew a few and lost once, and then that turned into he never lost any, and he lost his sword trying to, what was it? He lost his sword trying to
it was
an assassination attempt of Steven Seagal or something like that, and you're like, wow, you just don't stop, do you? So I sort of feel a tad cheated, but you've got to respect that amount of bullshit to actually slip through the net, and everyone buys it. And at the end of the day, regardless of whether it was bullshit or not, it makes for one of the greatest martial arts films ever made, in my opinion. I just think it is so, so good. Van Damme hit the ground running with this one. And yeah, it's just, it is funny. It's like a running joke now about FrankDux, isn't it? But yeah, I had to break it up into those 3 moments because it literally has spanned most of my life where you've known who, or you've thought you've known who FrankDux is, and then it changes.
It was really interesting going down that rabbit hole. I think what he was saying was with the sword, because people were like, oh, well, if you won the Kumite, you get given the sword in the film. So where's the sword? You like this? The whole thing is about earning the sword. And he was like, oh yeah. I don't have it because I traded it trying to get children back from pirates.
That was it. Yeah.
And you're like, okay. I mean, I can't prove that you didn't do that. So and there's a lot of kind of like going through it. There was a lot of kind of stories. Like he had these flights of fancy. In the documentary I watched, which is available on YouTube, I'll link it in the show notes. It's called "Put Up Your Dukes," like the line in the film, and he says that. It just like shaving away. It must have been produced by him because it's definitely siding on his aspect of the argument. But it's going like, oh yeah, and yeah, I can't believe people call me a liar and stuff. And yeah, by the way, I remember my dad got kidnapped and I saved him from all these kidnappers, but I can't really talk about that. And then it's like, why are you just like bringing that up, throwing that in, but then not disclosing any more information about it? It's bizarre. It's bizarre. And Van Damme and him had a big falling out because they were going to do a sequel to Bloodsport called Kumite Enter the New Dragon. And this is a script they worked on and they were going to work on it and do it. And then Van Damme put the script in his pocket, renamed it The Quest, and then made his directorial debut with that film. But it ended up being this huge court case, and they were like, yeah, we talked about it, we had some ideas, but then also we didn't put anything down in writing. And then FrankDux was like, no, I've got a recording of the conversation. I was going to get money for this. And they went, okay, Frank, where's the recording? The thing about that is there was an earthquake and it fell in all the rubble of this building. And they looked up the building and it was still standing.
Yeah.
You've got to respect someone, like you said, David. That you've got to respect someone who goes through with that so much. Like reading stuff about him, he was trained as a ninja as a teenager. Is he Michael Dudikoff? Is he American Ninja? It's just like
you know what? That's funny
ridiculous.
you should mention. It's funny you should mention Dudikoff because he was originally going to be the star of Bloodsport.
He was. Yes, he was.
Yeah.
Oh, right. Yeah. I didn't know that.
But they said he was too tall, I think. It was something like that.
He didn't know martial arts.
He didn't know martial arts at all.
That as well. That's a pretty good reason not to cast someone.
I mean, it's one of them things, isn't it? Like, obviously, this is a canon movie. The budget's $2 million, but made $50 million. So it's a massive success. And again, with Bloodsport, it's pop culture for people our age. Like, everyone knows, if you're into martial arts movies, and most lads our age were into these sort of movies. If you're into horror, you're into martial arts. And I always side with martial arts. As everyone knows, I'm a coward when it comes to horror movies. So this sort of movie was my bread and butter. And all my friends, this sort of movie would make you want to go and do karate and stuff because you want to be like Van Damme. Obviously Bruce Lee before us, but my age was Van Damme. He was like the hero. Certainly wasn't fucking Daniel Russo. Fuck me. He learned his karate skills on the back of a fucking stamp. But Van Damme had everything, didn't he? He had everything about him. So he was a bit of a hero. So watching him play this character and this FrankDux, like you said, Dave, the internet has done him a favour because it wasn't there. It's only as we've gone into the internet era, everyone's gone, this guy's a Billy bullshitter. But he got a career out of it. He was a fight choreographer on some of Van Damme's movies, on some other ones. Dave's Man Crush Mark Kadaka's what we call Dave. What's he called?
The Cascos.
The Cascos.
Oh, yeah. Good shout.
Movie with him. So he's done things. He's written books. So fair play to him. If you're going to go through with it, you've got to stick to your story in a way. And then even his military records, I'm sure you got this. It's classic. Like, he never went overseas, but he's telling us he got these like medals of valor and honor and all this shit. Yeah. It's like, Yeah, the CIA have tampered with me records.
Yeah,
Okay,
sure they have.
You've got to give him full credit.
Got
What
it
a
from
guy.
a costume shop.
Yeah, what a guy. He's like them guys when you see the army guys who confront people who are fake army, and they're like trying to raise money. It's a massive thing, isn't it, where they dress up in and they'll have fake medals. Like fucking, I know it's a reference here, Burt Reynolds, Cannonball Run 2, when he's the general doing this and he's got all the medals on. And that guy's like, oh my God, he's a general. It's like he's got them from from a costume shop. And that's what he is, this guy. And he's one of them fake soldiers of fortune, I suppose. But I just love the backstory and the fact that he blagged everybody into making a movie. I think that's great.
Yeah, he wrote a book about his work in behind enemy lines behind the Iron Curtain in Russia, because apparently they asked him. He's trained trained Black Ops, SAS, you name it, all the top military groups. He's trained them all. And apparently, when he was behind the Iron Curtain, height of the Cold War, he apparently found and neutralized a biological agent. Why didn't that get made into a film first? That's my question. Forget the Kumite. That sounds like James Bond shit, James Bond level shit.
It is. And I was just thinking there is a bit of a Cannonball link here, isn't there? You mentioned the Quest. Roger Moore. Cannonball Run. Yeah, there you go. Like 7 degrees of bacon, isn't it?
Certainly is. Another connection between Kickboxer and Bloodsport is that the writer, Sheldon Lettich, I'm going to say, Mark Dessal offered him to write Kickboxer first, but he liked FrankDux' story so much, or the tall tale, as he likes to call it. He was like, that sounds okay, but what about this? And that's when they went with Bloodsport first as well. So he kind of positioned that. He was like, this idea sounds more interesting to me. So there's another connection there. So Dave, you were saying it's one of the greatest martial arts movies of all time, in your opinion. Why is that?
I think one of the reasons I love it is because you get to see loads of different fighting styles. I think you can't go wrong with a tournament format as well. But because you've got the tournament format, I mean, you've got this big, huge sumo-like guy who's really strong. You've got Muay Thai kind of kickboxing in there, and you see Van Damme changing his style depending on who he's fighting, and you see all these little side stories and stuff. And I just think it is a lot of fun. And if you think about, I actually think the FrankDux stuff is almost that perfect moment in time, because when you had all the 70s Hong Kong kung fu movies coming in, basically, if you knew martial arts, you were basically a Jedi and you could do anything. There was no boundaries. It wasn't just about fighting and being in shape or whatever. There was a mysticism to it as well. And the idea that FrankDux could get away with talking about how he somehow gets invited to this tournament that no one knows about, but everyone knows about. And it's just chatting about in the bar. Oh, you're here for the Kumite. Yeah. It's just
I don't know what you're talking about. Nobody knows what the Kumite is, even though every character
talks about it.
All over the world know about the Kumite. Even the little boy at the start who dies, he goes, "I'm going to honor my dad and be in the Kumite."
Yeah. Exactly. So I guess the son could, but like Jackson, when he meets him and he's playing that old karate game, which I used to play on the arcade as well, and he's saying, "Hey, if you want to see some real fighting, come and see me at the Kumite." It's like, you just met this bloke and you're playing arcade games with him, and you're telling him about this secret that no one's supposed to know about.
It's illegal. And the problem I have with it, the tournament itself, is that if it's this illegal underground, seedy, dark tournament, why does it have a regulatory body?
Yeah.
They go, oh, well, I've been drafted to you guys because of the IFFA, which is I think there's the International Fighting Association or whatever it's called. And I was like, that doesn't make any fucking sense. And why would they have world records for an illegal fighting tournament? Again, doesn't make any sense. Now, this is another FrankDux. This is another FrankDux thing. I think as a way to prove that he did all this stuff was that he went, oh no, it's all registered and recorded. This organization, I'm going to look it up. I remember writing it down. Yes, the International Fighting Arts Association, so the IFAA. So that's what he says in the film, the guy. And I was like, right, okay, let me look into this. And I find out that this regulatory body that apparently, again, runs this illegal fighting tournament, somebody did some research and they traced back the registration of this business and this regulatory body. Guess what? Where the address was ended up being
FrankDux house.
It was. He's registered his own fucking house. So
amazing.
That's why we have this weird regulatory body. And they're like, "Oh, you can't fight outside the tournament." It's like, no, of course, it's illegal. You can do whatever you want. Break their legs.
These
before
criminals with their code and stuff.
Yeah, bizarre.
But I think and this comes to Chris's point before about comparing it with Bruce Lee. Bruce Lee's movies were amazing. And there's a lot of the Hong Kong stuff that I absolutely love. But there's something stylistic about the way Van Damme moves. And yes, you get to see it over and over, the splits you get to see in every movie. But it's like the completely impractical spinning kicks that he does that expel so much energy and have such a low probability of actually working in a fight. However, on camera, looks absolutely amazing. Like the way Bruce Lee moved was much more kind of practical, and he didn't do the jumping, spinning kicks. And I actually think what Van Damme did changed like that martial arts on screen kind of approach. And if you look at the stuff that like Scott Adkins does now, I actually think he's taking it to another level again. But it's standing on the shoulders of giants, isn't it? It's looking at those movies, it's looking at what's done, and then trying to be as good as that, and then improve upon it as well. So for me, that's one of the reasons I just think it's amazing.
Chris, do you feel the same way? Do you think it's one of the greatest martial arts movies ever made?
You know what? I think I do. Me and Dave were talking, Dan, before we come on last week about what we'd scored Bloodsport on the VHS. And obviously, we both absolutely loved it. I'd rented this loads of times as a kid, without a doubt. And we both didn't put it to the top. And I'm questioning our scores. I don't know why. Both of us, even Dave, and Dave has it higher, rates it highly than I do. I think it's a great martial arts movie. I still say Death Warrant's my favourite Van Damme one. But this is, it would be a Cloud City all day, I think, if I re-reviewed it. Because he's got everything. And like Dave said, them ridiculous spinning kicks. But it's even like when he's doing the training montage of the splits and that. Like they said, Scott Adkins, Dave went down a rabbit hole watching Scott Adkins movies like one after the other. A guy like Debt Collector and Debt Collectors, 1 and 2, both on Netflix. Ridiculous acting, but just stupid movies. But his martial arts stuff he does, there's no stunt doubles, there's no nothing. It's just purely Scott Adkins. Now with Van Damme, exactly the same. Even in No Retreat, No Surrender, I've got to get it in there, Dan. Obviously not the third one, but when he kicks at Peter Lightfoot, where he's knocks him out, and it always looks dead real with Van Damme. But Dave's right, Scott Adkins is that evolution, the next step up to him. But yeah, aesthetically, them kicks on Bolo, or Chong-Li's he's called in this, outstanding. When he loses his sight and he could be killed in a normal fight, he'd be killed, but all of a sudden he's got the skill to close his eyes and just grab him, and then he does gives him the elbow, and then you get the full Bruce Lee expression, the full I'm tensing every single body, every single vein in my body, and it just looks amazing whenever you watch Van Damme. I love it, and that is inspiration from the Bruce Lee movies, without a doubt. That whole sound and
Star Wars.
Yeah, well,
he's basically using the Force, isn't he?
Yeah, it's spider sense. That's what he's using. I like that he protects the ref. He knows it's the ref, and he's like, "Don't worry, get behind me."
Yeah.
I'll save you from this guy, because he's dared to put a bandana around his shin. I'm not having that. With Ray, who I met like 2 days ago, but we're now friends for life,
Yeah.
And no one questions that he may have had to fight Ray at some point, but it's like, we're great friends. However, we're going to kick the shit with each other in the final. It's like, it's so obvious. It's just one of them ridiculous things in the movie, but they're such great friends now after 2 days together.
I think, like you were saying earlier, I think like, I bet America sees themselves as FrankDux, but actually America is Ray Jackson.
That's very true. That
okay,
Ray Jackson.
USA.
Yeah.
I tell you, sorry, Chris. I was just going to say, one of the things that bugs me every time I watch it is when you're getting all of the prelude to the tournament, and you're following all these fighters, and I do genuinely want to know more about these characters that you see later in the tournament. But it's when it goes to Jackson, and he basically does nothing of skill at all. He's just hammering away at a boxing bag, and someone's talking to him, and he looks as big as Jackson. And again, this bloke, you don't know who he is, but he's talking openly in an open gym about the Kumite, this secret tournament. And he says, the bit that bugs me, he's like, yeah, I need a few more scars on my face. And I'm like, but you've got no scars on your face. He's saying it as if he's got loads of scars on his face. It bugs me every time. And it's as if the script has been written before the actor's been cast or something, and no one's really joined it up. It's like, well, shouldn't we at least like? There's a guy in Enter the Dragon. Is it Bob Wall? I think it might be Bob Wall.
Well, he's one who breaks it. Like breaks his arm. Bruce Lee breaks his arm, doesn't he?
Yeah, they put a big
a big scar
on him. Do something like that, but every time few more scars on my face. You've got no fucking scars. And you're shit.
He's just a truck driver, really, from America. That's what I'm saying. Why does FrankDux have to prove himself with this, odds against him, death touch, as you said, David? You're right. And then Ray's just there, stood next to him, doing nothing, just stinking Bud Light or something. I've just come off the street. I've got an invite. I don't know how.
I think it might be like his youth and the fact that he's been trained by Tanaka. Which is another bullshit FrankDux thing. This guy doesn't really exist. He inspired the character of a tiger from You Only Live Twice. And I'm like, yeah, if he was real, it might have done. But yeah, he's like, oh yeah, he died, and yeah, I was trained, and yeah, I don't know where he is. I don't know his whereabouts. It's kind of just like, I think it was his youth and him being under the tutelage of Tanaka, like, well, you're not Japanese, you can't do the Dimmak. Let's see you do the Dimmak. And it's like, and then Bolo gives the old Bruce Lee line that the bricks don't hit back. You've talked about Bolo before, Chris. Like, what a specimen!
Love it. Best chest ever in movies. Best chest ever.
Chris. I mean, I'm sure you've seen better chests. What about all these films you've seen? All the
okay. Well,
all the shoulder injury.
Male. Best, the biggest male chest.
Okay. Best male chest. That's your award you're giving out.
Yeah, and he's one of Van Damme's best friends. He was in Double Impact. We mentioned before that he's in so many of his movies. He's a baddie. It always comes up on Facebook. You got like the real things come up. That film with Brandon Lee when he's. With Brandon Lee's one of his breakout movies, and it's not the one with Dolph Lundgren, and he's a waiter, he's a bit undercover, and he ends up having a fight with Bolo in the alleyway, very reminiscent of Bruce Lee. I don't know if it's Game of Death or Way of the Dragon, but it's one of them, and it's very similar. But yeah, Bolo's just always a baddie. He's just horrible, and he's got that face where he's just like menacing, and he looks like he just wants to eat you. Yeah, he's proper like he's got great expressions.
That face when he stamps on Jackson and he's sort of looking down, and it's like so menacing. And the fact that he's maintained that over the years, all right, he's getting on a bit now, but you think he was in Enter the Dragon, almost 25 years before this one, and he still looks so good. And again, I'm going to nitpick here a bit, but when he gets Jackson's headband, and the crowd are shouting, Chong-Li, Chong-Li. And he's kind of, he's shouting to the crowd. And the ADR is so bad in some of this movie. Yeah. It always strikes me that, were they supposed to put something in there? Was he, because it looks like he's going, yeah, or something like that. He's just going, but there's no sound at all. It's very, very weird.
It's almost like a toddler just getting I think there's a gif of a toddler at like a football game going, yeah.
Yeah,
it almost reminds you of that. I quite like that about his character, though. You don't need he's a villain out and out. You don't need to know much about him, but I like that he wants the crowd to love him. I like that. That's his confidence. Like once the crowd is behind him, he's like, "Oh, I'm invincible," And again, the problem with the Kumite I have is they make it out like it's this big honorable thing. Many years ago, the Black Dragon Society, pit their best warriors against each other. And then everyone's like, and one of the stupidest lines in the film is, "That's why they call it Bloodsport, kid." Oh, really? This full contact martial arts tournament that's illegal. Oh, someone's going to bleed. Big fucking surprise. What a shock. What a shocker. But like, they make it out like this is big, like, it's very traditional. And then when Bolo kills the guy, because they've talked about Bolo killing people in the ring before, but when he kills the guy, the whole stadium goes.
It's weird, isn't it?
Yeah. And
he's
like,
done it before and everyone's massively shocked that he's done it again.
The referee's like, "Oh, we shouldn't have done that," and then everyone like turns away, and he's like, "You're next." And it's I just didn't understand that. It's like, well, we shouldn't have killed him, but this is part of the thing. We know that sometimes people die in this, so and they're all like, "Oh, very very dishonorable." But you've created this event. I don't.
Did you? In the version you watched as well, Dan? Just out of interest, did you see the one where it snaps that guy's shin?
Oh yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
That's,
so it's Tong Po in it.
Yeah, Tong Po, that's him.
Yeah, because I remember as a kid, first time watching it, going, "Oh my god, that's graphic!" Because it builds. Because really, Bolo, you could get paid sort of extra money. Really, you should be on like minimum wage because he says absolutely nothing. It's like 2 words in the whole film. He's just there, isn't he? It's very good that he plays this baddie with no dialogue whatsoever. Pretty much, there's only like maybe 1-2 lines in the movie, but that bit always stuck with me as a kid. I was like, what the fuck is this? Because he sees shin bone come out and everything. It was really graphic for martial arts movies because you never saw that sort of thing. So I thought at the time that was quite not iconic, but it was always something to stick with anyone who's ever seen Bloodsport. And then they go, what about his shin out? So just stuck with me as one of the moments in this movie that I'll never forget. But yeah, I don't know the re-edits if it's still in there, but if you've watched it, that's great because I was really conscious to see whether it had been sort of scanned out these days.
Yeah, no, it's definitely still in there. The version I watched it's definitely got it in. So I got to see all the blood in the sport. But yeah, no. Did you have There's some problematic things in these films, and on this podcast we do talk about them. And I think one of the ones was the African kind of fighter and his martial arts style. I was like, I don't think that's. I think much like Ray Jackson, that's not a martial arts style. It's just something they made up, and it's a bit cringe for me.
There is a monkey style.
Yes, I'm sure there is.
I'm
sure there is, but I don't think. That is
a proper racial. We talked about that on the VHS, didn't we?
Yeah.
The first thing that stood out more than anything was like, holy shit, that is so bad. That's proper racial profile in there. That's really bad. Yeah. It doesn't sit well with me. And watching it now, it's like, it's not just the style of the fighting. It's the guy's sort of personality and the way they've portrayed him. It's not good at all. Let's just say it that. I know it's sort of tiptoeing around it, but it's not good at all.
I think if you've seen the film, you know what we're talking about. I don't think we have to go into detail about it, but there's a certain style that his acting and his fighting style and it looks absolutely useless as well. I mean, Ray Jackson, he doesn't have any martial arts skills whatsoever, but at least he's effective as well.
It's very tough on the knees, doesn't it?
Oh yeah. Oh god, yeah. Looking at that, I'm like, I could probably have done that like 10, 15 years ago, but now not a chance. I'll be broken. So we've got this kind of subplot as well of the army coming after him.
Yeah.
Because they've spent a lot of money on him. Doing what? Is he a universal soldier? What?
I think he basically is, isn't he? FrankDux is a product of the US Navy. Forrest Whitaker as well. I remember watching that years later, and I was like, oh, I mean, that must be one of his first roles, I imagine. They play a funny role, don't they? Because I mean, when they've almost caught him, I mean, they've got the Hong Kong police there and everything, and he's walking down this corridor and he just takes everyone out, assaults all these policemen, and then the guy's just like, oh, okay, Frank. It's just ridiculous.
He blocks the tasers. I love that he's like, they go, take him, and then he just slowly walks down this alley, and you're like, Like, you think, take him, do it now, and they're just like, and then when someone pops their head out, it's like one of those shooting ranges when someone pops their head out and they get shot. He just goes, yeah, yeah, and it was only about 3 cops, I think.
Yeah, it wasn't the biggest bust, was it? But
Bizarre.
yeah, they just, and in fact, the copper goes to shoot him or get his gun out, and the guy's like, no, we've got to take him back. He's just such a convoluted piece of crap, but I guess it's part of FrankDux.
We can't hurt him. We can't let him hurt himself in the Kumite, but we have to hurt him. But then we don't want to hurt him.
Yeah,
and then later on, we'll just watch.
Yeah, we'll just get our popcorn and just watch the tournament, which we've got tickets for. This secret tournament that no one knows about.
Yeah, because they're happy to let law enforcement officers who are very much outside their jurisdiction. They just want to let them in. It's fine.
Yeah.
But you say that nothing beats though. They talk about like the chase, the carry-on cartoon chase.
Fucking hell!
Van Damme's running at like 1 mile an hour, and Forrest Whitaker, the other guy, are at full speed, and they're dancing. Oh, he's like jumping over the boats, and it's obvious they're going to fall in, and he's there like laughing. Hey guys, it's like, well, do you know where you're staying? Do you know where the tournament is? Why are you running? They're going to run into you at some point. They know where this, because it's like the reporter. He's got to be the worst reporter ever. If you're a reporter undercover trying to find this illegal Kumite, you don't go into the fighters' hotel and start quizzing fighters directly, going, "Oh, you're an illegal fight thing called a Kumite, aren't you?" Nope. It's
the hotel sponsoring it.
Outside, welcome to the fighters of the Kumite. But don't tell anyone. At the end, he went, "Shh, don't tell anyone." But she's suspect at best. And then when she becomes like someone's guest and she's all dolled up for the end and everything, it's just like, come on, Again, Frank and her, she is so committed to Frank. She's upset about Ray. It's like, don't even know these guys. Ridiculous.
God, Ray gets really bad from Bolo as well, doesn't he? He gets like his blood, like his head just explodes with blood. It's like a melon exploding, and you think he's dead. And then he's like, he's got this little bandage on his head, and he's like drinking beer, and he's going, "Oh yeah, how did it go? Did you beat him? Oh, he made him say Mate. Oh, even better." It's bizarre. And like Frank doesn't seem that bothered that she's like potentially sleeping with other dudes to get into the Kumite and get the story. Because I mean, it's implied.
Let's face it, she's only there so Van Damme can get naked in front of the camera.
Yeah,
absolutely. And this is what he would request this as well, I think, in the films. He was like, I've got to have at least one scene of nudity, of one with my arse out, or, in my very tight pants, and I don't blame him. He looks good. He's got a good bod, as you were saying, he brings visually his physique is very unique and interesting. And I don't think there is a physique quite like him. And again, it's probably that ballet background and all sorts of that kind of stuff. So I do get it. Yeah. I see why you would do that. And again, this has made him, this launched his career, didn't it? Bloodsport, no matter how you feel about it, I've not got nostalgia goggles like you guys have, because I only watched it a couple of years ago. I went round to Dennis's and he put it on, and we were like, and I was kind of poking fun at it, and I was like,
bit mainstream for Dennis, isn't it?
I know, right? And it's also not got horrible things happening constantly, like Cannibal Holocaust does. But yeah, so I'm not. I've got some critical eye on it. So, and I appreciate what it is, and it's definitely something I enjoyed watching this time round. I think I enjoyed it more because I knew what I was getting, and I could kind of get on board. I have to say, I bloody love the music.
Oh, it's amazing.
Classic, cheesy. Stan Bush. I love a bit of Bush. And
don't we all?
Don't we all? I mean, as soundtracks and scores go, I'm a big Transformers the movie fan, because you've got Stan Bush in there, and you got Vince DiCola, who did Rocky IV, the soundtrack, the score for Rocky IV. So I'm like, that's about as 80s wonderful, progressive, cheesy rock as you can get. So every time I hear Stan Bush on anything, I'll take it. Kumite.
Oh, it's amazing. And the other one that we're going to speak about, of course, some great songs in that. And have you seen the new Transformers trailer? This might be slight
I
Transformers
haven't just yet. I know
spoilers?
it's the Beastie.
Okay,
the Beastie.
I won't. You just mentioned the movie there.
Mm.
Wink, wink.
Okay.
Watch it and we'll reconvene.
Mm.
But yeah, I think the music is amazing, and the best bit about that chasing scene is the music and the montages and stuff as well, and the kumite. It's just it's just so 80s and just so great, and it for me it's perfect for this movie.
Chris, what do you have to say about the music?
I think. Well, I'm not really a music guy, I suppose. Not like that. Listen to the.
Weren't you in a band?
Not the point. I just shouted a lot.
I can confer.
I'm not very good at music, Dan. Yeah. No, what I mean, but the Kumite bit, I totally agree with that. You'd never forget that if you watch this movie, 100%. Whereas everything else just was noise, I think, in the background for me. But that bit always sticks with me. Sticks with me. So yeah, it's a good spot. If you're into that sort of thing, I can totally get it. But I think as well, considering the budget and what they did, there's a lot of things you can pick out of this that are in pop culture. You know, even this one, and I think probably when we talk about Kickboxer, that's probably got even more. But yeah, this is a classic movie.
I've got some issues with maybe some of the way it was filmed or the cinematography, but we'll get into that later. But I have to say that final fight scene with Bolo and Van Damme is just like, you know, even if you're not a fan of the rest of it and all the other stuff, you just put that on for like, you know, the 10 minutes of the final fight. It's brilliant. It's fantastic. You know, it has all the stuff. It's shot really well. It's got the emotion, the intensity, the music, all just comes together, and it's a real. That's how you kind of come out and finish a film, like full on, balls to the wall action. You know, and you're there. It's like Rocky. Like by the end of it, you're so into. You know, and it's quite heavily inspired by Rocky and the Karate Kid and things like that, which is, again, you know, steal from the best. And it just works. And by that point, you're like, absolutely, come on, Frank. You know, you're absolutely behind him 100%. You can't wait to see him take Bolo down. And you know, it's inevitable, but again, you're still riding that roller coaster all the way through, and it's fantastic. I love it.
And the fact that Chong-Li, who's this supreme athlete and fighter, this murderer of people, is so worried about Van Damme that he has this blinding powder tucked away in his belt here. It's just ridiculous. But all of the ridiculousness of it, and the acting in this is awful. But it just makes me love it even more. I think that's possibly the nostalgia talk in there. But I mean, I think possibly the prize for the worst actor is young FrankDux. You know, when he gets caught trying to steal a sword, and he seems like, you know, he just, any kid would run away in that situation. But he's just like gently putting the sword back, and then he cuts his thing, he cuts his cap off, and then he's like, "Are you gonna call the cops?" It's a combination of the voiceover. Yeah.
We had a deal. I was going to do it.
Why don't you train me? So it's the kid actor, but also the voiceover. I have no idea if the kid did the voice for himself or what, but I mean, he gets the prize. But across the board, it's poor, and like you say, the lighting is very inconsistent, isn't it?
It's just a washout, especially in the stadium in the Kumite. It's just one flat, like, luminous light, and it's like the way I'm lit right now. It's not good, but it's just it's like overexposed, and that's a real shame.
And yet earlier in the movie, like when he goes to see his master and he's not well, and you know, because he's an old man. And he looks exactly the same as when he was a young man.
Yeah, his hair's just got the dye in it. Yeah.
Well, they even put the grey sides on and the grey wings, but it's really dark, you know. So it goes from that really dark to the really light, and you know, it's not quite Samurai Cop levels of bad lighting, but you know, it is pretty bad.
What's interesting as well, the director of this was known more so as an assistant director. He assistant directed Blade Runner.
My word.
What?
He was the assistant director. He's directed a few other things, but this is probably his most popular film that he directed. But he was the assistant director on Blade Runner and a few other like well-known ones. But and that makes me think like, I think it could look better with that kind of skill behind the camera. Maybe it was a budgetary thing. I don't know. Maybe he didn't have any ideas. Maybe he was like, this is just, I'm getting
Maybe
on
he's
a
a bit of a fucking FrankDux.
Aren't we all? Aren't we all?
Yeah.
But the thing is, I'm fascinated by the director role because you can't be everything.
No.
And so the real skill, I imagine, is knowing what you need help with and bringing in the right people.
Yeah.
Now, if you're not great at recognizing your own shortfalls, then that's why you don't make a great director. So, the cinematographer for Blade Runner, he might have been just looking at it going, oh, yeah, it looks all right. And not even recognizing the difference between that and something like Bloodsport, and you just get a really cheap guy, an intern or something doing the cinematography. It could be something like that, where he's just not got. You can't take all the traits. You can't take, say, the sound design and stuff like that. Someone has to be an expert in that, and you have to bring the right people in for the right job.
I think now is almost time to go on to Kickboxer, and we'll talk about. But there's one final thing I wanted to mention about FrankDux. So one of the big holes in his argument is basic maths. So he said, Frank said the Kumite had 60 rounds. Okay, so single elimination events have a particular pattern with regards to the number of rounds and number of participants required. Every time a round is added, the number of participants needs to be doubled. A 2-round tournament requires 4 contests. A 3-round tournament, 8. A 4-round tournament, 16, and so forth. The simple and mathematical formula for calculating the necessary number of participants is 2 to the power of the number of rounds. The number of human beings required for a 60-round tournament is millions of times as many humans as exist on the planet Earth as of 2022.
And he knocked 56 of them out, if you remember.
In 3 seconds.
Yeah.
Yes. Another connection as well is Paulo Toko, who plays Paco. He, on his shorts, he's a kickboxer as well. It says, "Sore thankful" in the Thai syllabary. This is the name of the gym that Toka trained at as a legitimate kickboxing competitor. In the future, Toka would use these connections with the gym to make it a filming location for Kickboxer 1989. And they would collaborate again on Death Warrant. But yes.
Nice.
Hero.
So let's talk about Kickboxer. So we had Chris's wonderful synopsis before. So Dave, do you want to give us a synopsis of Kickboxer? I think it's going to be a very easy job for you.
Sure enough. So Kurt Sloan is the cornerman for his brother, US kickboxing champion Eric Sloan. When Kurt witnesses his brother become maliciously paralyzed in the ring by Thailand champion Tong Po, Kurt vows revenge. With the help of Jan, a kickboxing trainer who lives in a remote area of Thailand, Kurt trains for the fight of his life.
Ooh, that was great. Very good. He's rehearsed that, hasn't he?
You can tell why he does the intros of the movies and I don't. Can't you? The difference between the two, and I'm just making it up as I'm going along, not knowing anybody's names or anything. And Dave's there with full research. I'm not even going to go behind the curtains. I know exactly what he's just read that. Well, that was a great intro.
Brilliant. So again, you felt very strongly about Bloodsport. How do we feel about Kickboxer? It has, again, a lot of similarities, but a lot of differences. What are our feelings? Let's go with Chris.
It's funny, because I've watched Kickboxer in the last couple of years, and watching it, knowing we were coming on and we were sort of comparing the two movies. When you watch it now, I think Kickboxer, especially the dance is probably more iconic than anything in Bloodsport. As much as I'll tell you now, I think Bloodsport's a better movie. Kickboxer's dance scene is fucking brilliant. And Tong Po is a legendary baddie. As much as we've got Bolo, I think it's more Bolo Young, not actually Chong-Li, you remember, because Bolo's always a baddie and he was always in a lot of Van Damme movies around this time as well. In one of the guys, he was always using the big baddie he had to overcome in a couple of films. in this Tong Po, and never forget him kicking the pillars and all that stuff. But just for pop culture references, the dance. I saw him on Conan O'Brien about 5 or 6 years ago, and they recreated it. And he's there talking, and you don't even think it's going to happen. And all of a sudden, you've got these two guys at a table, and the music comes on, and I'm doing the dance and all that stuff, and that's iconic. But I think as a movie, when you watch it, it's what we said before. This has got even more of the Van Damme things about where him and his brother Eric Kurtz grew up in Europe. He grew up in America.
Yeah.
He did ballet. Kurtz, this brash, horrible. Basically, he's Ray Jackson with muscles, really, and he's a horrible person.
He's a prick. His brother's an
horrible
absolute prick.
The best bit about it is at the start is when he goes to he gets the hookers and Kurtz there laughing at him, going thumbs up, yeah, great, and he's like.
She wants to make it with the champ.
Yeah, it's just it's so misogynistic. It's like what they do in these movies, very clever. It's like nobody deserves to be put in the situation Eric's in. But once he gets paralyzed and that, you're sort of thinking, well, that's your own fault for being a dick. And that sounds horrible, but they set him up to be a bit of a bad guy, don't they? He's always putting Kurt down. Kurt's when he's saying about, I did ballet. My mum sent me to ballet, and it's like, Van Damme, not again. He didn't double impact. He's talking the women ballet when he's like the more feminine brother of the two, and to be tough, the tough brother, he slicks his hair back, and he wears a leather jacket. That's how they differentiate between the two characters in double impact. But in this again, he totally dismisses Van Damme, and when they do the kicks in the park and everything, and it's like, yeah, pure power, do this, and it's like, he is just Ray Jackson. I've only just come to that conclusion now, but he's just horrible.
I think Ray Jackson's more likable though, because he's kind of because he's a simpleton. Because he's a bit like he's a bit punch drunk, isn't he? And I think you can you feel a little bit sorrier for him because he's not going around even after he gets put in a wheelchair. By Tong Po, he's still grabbing the nurse's ass. He's not like, he's not like, oh, maybe I should change my ways or reaevaluate my life. No, just grab asses.
Yeah, he's a horrible guy, isn't he?
There's one bit later where, he is a bit of a tool, but before the fight, before basically he has his one fight, Kurt, and then he goes in to fight Tong Po, the greatest fighter in the country. Eric gets a little bit, jittery. He's like, look, I don't want you to be in a wheelchair as well. So I thought that didn't redeem him, but it was slightly better and a bit out of character.
Yeah, I agree. Well, I was like, well, he's right. He's absolutely right. Do not fight this guy. He's involved in the mafia. He's the organized crime there and what have you. And he's like, don't fight him. There's no need for you to fight him. It's all kind of this machismo. And he's like, yeah, but I've trained for months to do this, to avenge you. And he's like, no, it's fine. Don't worry about it. It's great. Yeah, I don't know. He was my least favorite part of the movie, but I do agree. I think that one moment I was like, oh, it's actually quite genuine. And he was a real kickboxer champion, I believe.
Dennis Alexio, And if you watch his highlight reel, he didn't lose many fights. He was an absolute beast of a kickboxer. So he backed everything. He backed himself completely real life. And that's a bit difficult, I think, when you watch him, because he's like, in real life, he'd lever everyone, but it's a film. You've got to go with it. And you're right. He's sort of like, he reminds me a little bit of I'm going to mention his name, Dan.
Go on.
Lauren Avedon, a king of the kickboxers, so dismissive of the martial arts when he's at the start with Cynthia Rothrock in that ring, and he just starts levering everyone. And that's how he is. It makes him out to be. And it's almost, this film really, this whole thing with Eric is basically Rocky IV. He's basically Apollo Creed going to fight Ivan Drago, because Kurt, by mistake, just hears this whack, like a baseball bat, just whack, whack, whack. And that's the scene when he comes in and Tong Po set just levering this pillar, like he's going to kick the building down. Then he elbows it and he just the whole, and then Kurt's like, no, you can't fight. And it's very similar to Drago, because as soon as he gets in there, Tong Po just absolutely mauls him, doesn't he? He absolutely just, he's the world kickboxing champion, and Tong Po just dismisses him like he's an amateur. So yeah, it's great table setting for the movie, but this all happens in about the first 20 minutes of the movie, which is really
less than that, I'd say. Maybe 10 minutes.
Yeah.
What do you think of his of the American guy, the cab driver?
What's he doing there? Why is he so invested?
Is he from the Vietnam War, a veteran again? The old classic in these films. There's always someone there. And why, like Dave said there, sorry, Dave, I need to steal your thunder, but why is he invested? He's with this girl. He's betting on it. Next minute, he's like, well, you're American. You've got to help him now. That's how it works. I'm sorry. He's from nowhere. He's become like a sidekick for Kurt, Annie, and the family and everything.
It's like the scene in Bloodsport where Ray Jackson's been injured and he's having the argument with the reporter, and he's like, "You want to be the best reporter? I want to be the best fighter in the Kumite." And it's that scene, but it's way too early in the film for that scene. Yeah. So and he doesn't know this guy, and the guy is acting like he's like they've known each other for years. It's like, you can't fight him. It's impossible. He's a killer. You'll be crippled as well. And it's like, you literally a guy off the street who didn't give a fuck 2 minutes ago. And you put him in the cab, take him to the hospital, and now you're like, it's the heart-wrenching scene. And I was like, and then later on, he's just like chomping cigars and going, "Let's go to the titty bar," and all this.
Yeah. Very good, that.
It's just really odd for that character to it feels like a last-minute addition into the script. Like, we need somebody else. We need something else going on.
Yeah.
What was the guy from American Ninja?
Jackson.
Was it Jackson?
Action Jackson. He was called Action, even though Carl Weathers plays Action Jackson.
Yeah.
The nickname Action Jackson in it, yeah.
He's sort of like that character, isn't he? But like you say, he says something like, "I can't let this happen again." What do you mean again?
Were you also in Bloodsport?
He becomes this massive, he's taking on the mafia and everything. He just happens to be this John Matrix / John Rambo type character.
Classic. I mean, in AWOL, he's got the same guy who backs him up in AWOL. Van Damme's character, he's avenging his brother again. And then he ends up with the sidekick guy from nowhere who just like takes him under his wing and they become good buddies. Basically, it's the same part again. It's a Van Damme trope because obviously his acting wasn't amazing, I don't think. I think there is films where he's quite good. This isn't one of them.
You're really struggling there, Chris. You're really reaching.
Yeah.
He's kind of good.
Got presence.
I will say it was quite surprising to me that there wasn't quite as much. Obviously, with Bloodsport, it's a tournament. We see a lot more martial arts, but I kind of expected there to be a bit more like fights, or sparring or something.
I think it's mostly montage, isn't it? You get the brother getting paralyzed really early on, and then that creates him his motivation, if you like. He gets fridged, and then he finds the master quite quickly, Jean, and then it's almost half the movie seems to be montage. And like I say, he has his one fight, and they call him
the White Warrior. Yeah,
White Warrior.
It was something like Nanchak Tao or something like that, and they start chanting that. And I for some reason, like all the images and posters and stuff I'd seen, that hawk or bird is very prominent. So I thought it was going to be something around the bird, like he was like the American hawk or something like that, or the heroic hawk or something. And I was like, White Warrior is a bit bloody generic.
Yeah. Nung Tao or something.
Nung Chak Tao or something like that.
Yeah.
No, like,
Nung Suk Kao.
That was it. That was it. Yeah. That was it. Yeah.
Well, if you slow that down, a nun sucks a cow. There's probably a movie out there, but anyway.
Trust Chris. Trust Chris.
Sort of movie.
to be honest, I could probably find it, and I can.
Yeah, let's not. Don't pick it. Don't pick it as a Patreon. No, but I think as well. Though I don't think Dave has. But have you seen the new Creed movie, Creed 3, Dan?
I've not. I've seen the first Creed, but not the last two.
Ah, right. Okay. So, is there any point? I don't want to spoil it, but
do they have a boxing match by any chance?
Yeah, but what I mean is the plot of the movie, and it's Michael B. Jordan's first directorial. It's very well shot and everything. It's a good, enjoyable movie. Don't get me wrong. It's in that universe. Obviously, Stallone's not in it, but the pretense of how Kurt gets to fight Tong Po is pretty much how Jonathan Majors goes from nowhere, like Rocky in the first Rocky, to fighting fucking Adonis Creed from nowhere. And we all know that to get to a professional level in any sport for someone just to come from the shadows with a 12-week training camp and then be ready to fight the greatest fighter or whoever on this earth is not only a stretch, it's fucking what's he called out of Fantastic Four? Fucking
Reed Richards, Mr.
Reed
Fantastic.
Richards levels of stretching.
Ring.
And this is what this is, isn't it? Like you say, he has this one fight and he's like, I want Dong Po. I want Dong Po. And he's like,
That was good.
That was a good one, yeah.
I can pull it out sometimes,
Give me
Dave.
Dong Po.
Give me Dong Po. And he's like, I want Dong Po. But it's like, there is no way you can start here and then be up there, you know. And I know that vengeance thing, it's his brother.
Sure.
And it's all that. But it's also a case of, it's not realistic. But you go with it in the 80s, fast forward to 2023, it's still fucking happening in movies. So there you go.
Absolutely. I did like the kind of more mystical element this one has, like when he's training in the temple and he's seeing the warriors of the past, and he's kind of, I don't know, absorbing or learning and stuff. I enjoyed that. I think it is a better looking movie than Bloodsport. I think we were talking about the lighting and the cinematography, like especially the end fight looks amazing. I think take Van Damme, the story, Bolo, but stick them in that arena with the way they filmed that. I think you'd have an even better finale for Bloodsport than you already had. Because I don't know, I just like the fire, and again, it looks like it's fucking illegal for a start. You know, I believe it's an illegal event. There's no fuckers there. It's dark, dimly lit. You know,
the glass on the thing when he licks the glass on his tongue and everything. I think you're right, Dan.
Iconic.
It is iconic. No, it is, Dave. You're right. But I think with Tong Po, he's a better baddie than Bolo. As in, I think the movies, Bolo's still a great baddie, but I think for the context of this movie, he's almost superhuman. Even Bolo, when he's fighting in the other fights, there's a couple of times when he gets a dig off someone. He might be showboating to the crowd, but you can see he can be hurt. Up until Kurt actually fights Tong Po, nobody's been able to hit him, have they? No one's been able to hurt him. Everyone, he's had a couple of fights in the movie, dispatched. I reviews all. I honestly watch it this time. The fucking montage goes on for far too long. I mean, I love the fact that when he's kicking shit out the tree and breaking his shin, and his coach just goes, "Go home," and he's like, "Hang on, he's fucking got an A&E here. How are you going to let this guy do this and then go and fight this Tong Po, this man made of steel?" Like, yeah, you're trying to toughen him up, but it's like he's trying to say it's in the mind and he breaks the tree. That looks so painful. I remember when I did Thai boxing with my coach, and I remember he didn't have the pads on, the shin pads and that, and he was like, "Let's do a demonstration," and he put his leg up, and I remember my shin come up like a balloon. I can feel it now. It was the most horriblest thing I've ever done in my life, and you're like, and that's bone on bone. But to do that like that is clever. I love the stuff with Van Damme with the splits and that. I love all that because he's so athletic. He's so impressive on the screen. And it's him. It's not body double. It's Van Damme. But yeah, and it's the dismissiveness of the girl gets raped. And she's like passing it off later. "We're not going to tell Kurt." It's like, no, tell the fucking police, not tell Kurt.
Tell fucking everyone. Even, is it Jean? I think it was Jean, the trainer. He's like, "Oh, there." He's like, that's that scene where she's bawling her eyes out. She's devastated, and she's just like, "Yeah, we won't tell him."
Yeah.
It's like there is definitely and again with Kurt's brother as well. There's definitely a misogynistic streak through this. Like I think Jack said in his comment that he's left for this podcast, he said, "Yeah, there's an underlying misogyny to this," and you know, and again, there's some unfortunate kind of racism. Like Tong Po is definitely not Thai, and he's it definitely doesn't look the way he looks in the film. We'll say that much, and he's pretty problematic as a person as well, in his own life, which makes it kind of the way his character is even more like bit icky. But we won't go into that. So, is there any kind of final criticisms or kind of things that you really liked about Kickboxer before we compare the two?
I'll say as a criticism, and it's elaborating on Chris's point really, that the montage, the training, 80s set my expectations incorrectly about how quickly he could train up and become world class at something. So I guess you could say, well, it's a bit more realistic, but you take when Van Damme's training with his brother Kurt and Eric, and they're in the park, and he's saying, "What are you doing with that tippy tappy shit? This is what you need, power." He's just like, "You're a cock, mate." But I'm not believing for a single second. Van Damme is holding the pads there with his massive ripped body and massive muscles. I'm not believing for a second that this guy is not good. And so, fair enough. I do like the montage and everything, but I just think it goes on for so long. And I do think Bloodsport, the fact that you've got the tournament is a little bit up and down. I do think the dance in this is an absolute highlight of Van Damme's career. And I think Tong Po as a baddie, I agree with Chris there. I think it sets him up so well at the beginning when he's kicking that concrete pillar. It's iconic. Everyone remembers that bit because it's just like a holy fuck moment. But I think, and then the ending's kind of iconic as well, but it's almost like Popeye eating his spinach. When Popeye has his spinach, Bluto's fucked. And when, Kurt gets the nod that everyone's safe, and then he just absolutely kicks Tong Po's ass. So there's no back and forth. So I think it's a bit more level throughout the movie.
Yeah.
There's not those ups and downs of emotion that you kind of have in Bloodsport. And I will just say, I think the inspiration for this, there was an actual real fight. I'll have to try and dig it out and send it through to you. But there was an American kickboxer fighting this Muay Thai fighter. And you can see from the early rounds, the kickboxer gets in his flashy kicks and it looks like he's winning. And commentators are just like, this guy, this Muay Thai fighter is boring. And he just kept pounding away, kept kicking away with his concrete legs at this kickboxer's legs. And you could see by the end of it, the kickboxer didn't want to throw any kicks because he's like, I'm just throwing this against pure concrete. And so, the Muay Thai fighter won. And this, this mysticism, this reputation of Muay Thai started to grow and grow. So I think that was part of the inspiration for the movie. And I'll definitely send that through after we've finished recording.
Oh, definitely. I'd love to see that. Anything else, Chris?
I think you hit on it before, Dan, was why did he, in Bloodsport, why did he have to sort of, Chong-Li, why did he have to blind Frank, sorry, getting mixed up now, but why did he have to sort of blind him to win? He's this all-conquering, unbeaten champion. He's killed people. Similar with this, with Tong Po, why do you need to kidnap his brother and do that to his girlfriend? It's like, this guy's from nowhere. You're a professional animal of a fighter who's beaten every single man. Why is this ballerina, shall we say, ballet dancer, why are you scared? Is it because of maybe it's because of his coach. He knows who his trainer is. He's this, magical trainer that they've already alluded to, a bit of, plot device there. But it does seem a little bit far because Tong Po on his own is just an absolute maniac, and he's just so tough and everything. Like you said, the glass on the tongue, everything, hitting the pillar, as we said before. I just think watching it now, the fight scene's good. But again, when you watch these films in real life, it'd be like, Van Damme would be knocked out by any pro fighter. They're so telegraphed in these movies. But as a kid, I lap it up, and I still lap it up now. They're so slow and ponderous because he's got, like Dave said before, he's got to get the flashy kicks in. He's got to get these. He's dispensing so much energy. It's like they don't work. But it's a great spot, that Dave. You're right. It looks so good on screen. Aesthetically, it looks amazing, but in real life, it's pretty crap, really. It wouldn't happen. You'd probably do one of them in a fight. If you tried it again, probably take your legs out, sweep the leg, Johnny, or whatever. But no, I think overall, with watching both of them together, they've got some. I think with the Kickboxer, I just think the montage, I would have liked to have seen his brother beating people in America and getting this sort of invite to come over to Asia and then like come and fight our best fighters. If you know, like one of them, because he's such an egomaniac, he's like, right, we're going, we'll show these guys. And then obviously again, that sort of plays in, suppose, into the Rocky IV side of it. You know, Apollo Creed's disgusted that this Russian fighter's decided to dare come over to America, and he's an amateur fighter, but he can beat professionals like that. You know, it wouldn't happen, but it's part of the film.
Yeah,
that would for me probably would have settled better. It's just the fact that they're there. He has one fight against someone who's about 3 foot smaller than him and just kicks the shit out of him. And it's like he's nails. He'll beat anybody. And then Tom Poe just mauls him. So I think I would have preferred more fighting. The montage stuff is good. It was going into the backstory of where his trainer was, getting into the mindset of these previous champions. It's the only way you can beat Tong Po is beat him at his own game. But I don't think it's explained very well. It's just set pieces of Van Damme doing the splits and in his undies and whacking trees and that. So yeah, very, very up and down film. I think, if I'm being honest.
No, I think you guys are right. I think it's strange because I think some of the strengths of Kickboxer are not the strengths of Bloodsport and vice versa.
Yeah,
there's things I really like in Kickboxer and the stuff I really like in Bloodsport. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see the comparison, which we have arrived at. So the first category for comparison is writing. So which film had the better writing? I'll go with Chris first.
It's got to be Bloodsport because FrankDux, I'm reading the guy who wrote the movie, and he said that he knew that they were tall stories and he actually says they were bullshit, but it made for something that he knew he could turn into a film. So it's got to be FrankDux. The mind of a maniac is brilliant. And I love the fact that he's created a franchise out of it. I know there's a couple of Bloodsports. I didn't realise that Ray Jackson is in Bloodsport too, so I'm going to have to watch that now. I've never seen it. I know them.
Because Ray Jackson's in it?
Yeah, just to see how bad it is, Dave. Because the guy on the front covers looks like Van Damme.
He does look like Van Damme. Yeah,
it's not Van Damme. It's that's a proper lag in your audience. Everyone thinks, it's Van Damme, that, and it's not. But I think for writing, it's got to be Bloodsport because I applaud FrankDux and how that came to the screen.
What about you, Dave? What do you think?
I do like to disagree with Chris, but I mean, you've got to give it to Bloodsport. I think there is more of a story, a tall tale to this. You've got the fact that he is coming from his Navy background. He's not supposed to be there. You've got the whole mysticism around the Kumite. If you compare that to Kickboxer, and this has been replicated so many times, hasn't it? You know, loved one is injured or something, and then he has to train up with the Mr. Miyagi archetype, and then he defeats the baddie at the end. That's essentially it, and I absolutely love it. But yeah, so I think for writing, it's got to go to Bloodsport.
I like Kickboxer because I think emotionally it's a stronger story. I think there's a kind of a better through line, but then again, it is lacking a lot of the kind of peaks and troughs of Bloodsport. Like, you know, the lows of Bloodsport are quite low and quite funny in that respect. But then when you get the highs, you're like, yeah, I'm absolutely here for this. But yeah, there is something about, it's almost like Van Damme wanted to push his acting and was like, right, let's do, you know, more of a love story. Let's push it. Maybe let's have more problems, more issues, and more emotional scenes that I can chew on and practice and hone my acting skills. We will get onto the acting very shortly, quote unquote acting. But I have to agree with you as well. I think Bloodsport as a story, I think again it's inspired by the bullshittery of Dukes, but also takes from, you know, Karate Kid or, you know, those classic martial art tournament based things, and again would inspire more after this. So yeah, I have to agree with the writing with you guys. But yes, acting. Dave, what do you have to say about the acting? You were saying some very mean comments towards the acting earlier. some of these young try-hard actors. What do you have to say?
Oh, the acting in Bloodsport is horrendous. As much as I love it, but you know, even the bits where they're trying to act like the guy who's his master, it always sticks out at me where he's saying, passes on from father to son, father to son. It's terrible. But, you know, when Van Damme first shows up at the house and he's got this shit-eating grin on him. It's all just so bad. I mean, Bolo basically plays Bolo, and that's fine. And when it gets into the tournament, I think that's fine. And I think for the role that Jackson, whatever the actor's name is, for the role that he's playing, he's actually pretty good. But I think Kickboxer, to be fair, is a level up from Bloodsport in terms of the acting. I just think, like you say, that it doesn't have the emotional ups and downs for me, and it's not as fun as a movie. But in terms of pure acting, I know that, and I don't think this doesn't stand up to Citizen Kane. You know what I mean? We're comparing things in the same gene pool here, but yeah, I would have to give this one to Kickboxer.
Chris.
I've got to give it to Bloodsport again.
Ah.
I think some of the acting Kickboxer is terrible. His fucking brother, the American veteran, his pal at the ringside, brings him in. His master, he's supposed to be this like deep thinking, like you said, Dave, the sort of Mr. Miyagi character, as in the mentor that they go to for the training. It's the same old DNA in it, the same thing, So no, as much. Yeah, you're right. I mean, some of it's like, okay, USA and stuff. It's terrible. Like some of that is just, but I've got to go with Bloodsport. I just think there's more meat on the bone there. There's more bit of acting. He's got Forrest Whitaker in one of his first, I think he's a great actor. I know now he's a great actor, it's one of his first parts, but there was a little bit of chops there, and there's more acting in that than there is in Kickboxer for me. Maybe that's a bad thing. Maybe that's why you both like saying Kickboxer, but I just think Kickboxer's just a montage, and his brother's a bellend, and they skate over sexual assault like it's nothing.
Yeah,
the acting's terrible. So I'm going with Bloodsport on that one.
Ooh, I have to decide now. I am going to go with Kickboxer. I appreciate what you're saying, Chris. Absolutely do. I think there is there's something there, definitely. And like even the homoeroticism between him and Ray Jackson at the end, like, if you ever need me, brother, I'll be there for you. Yeah, I know. We're best friends forever now. And again, I enjoy the kind of the pitfalls of the acting and the heights of it. And again, when Van Damme's like screaming, he's in pain, even when he's kind of blind acting, I'm like, I'm buying it. Yeah. I'm buying, even though it's not particularly good blind acting, I'm still like, because of the way the story's progressed and the way the characters are developed. But yeah, I think the emotional core and the strength of the performances, I have to give it to Kickboxer in this instance. So sorry, Chris, but you never know. I might agree with you next time. So this is going to be a tricky one. Music. It's about the exact same two people. So, Chris, which do you think had the better songs and the better score?
I think I'm going to go Bloodsport all day long. Kumite, I know I said before, it's all noise. There's nothing memorable about the Kickboxer music that I can turn around and go, well, actually, no. Actually, I'm changing my mind.
Oh.
I'm changing my mind. The dance scene. Nothing beats the dance scene.
You said it was iconic.
We didn't really talk about it, but the way the guy comes in with the sexy voice and that, and he's talking away and he's moving and doing all the splits as he kicks the shit out of all these henchmen. Kickboxer. That bit, that is more iconic than anything in Bloodsport for me, without a doubt.
Sharp left turn. What about Cruising Through the Streets of Siam? Was that one of your favorites?
Don't remember it, so I'm just gonna go.
Cruising through the streets of. That's it. Was it Everybody Loves a Winner? They Know That I Am.
We talk about homoeroticism. I know they're playing brothers, but that bit when Streets of Siam is playing and they're just going in the boat, and I think Van Damme's got his arm around his brother, and they're looking at the small children and taking pictures of them. It gets all very weird.
Yeah.
But great music.
Very good, very good. So where do you go, Dave, in this? So Chris has gone Kickboxer.
I do love Kumite in. I think the music is brilliant in both. I think the Kumite in Bloodsport is amazing, but I think Streets of Siam is a favorite of mine. And what is the one?
Never Surrender? Is it that one?
Never Surrender. Just amazing, but. Even when Van Damme's doing one of his training montages, like on the album, it's called Advanced Training, I think. I was just trying to scroll through it there.
Yeah.
But I just think the whole soundtrack, the whole score, if you like, is just really, really strong in Kickboxer. And the dance scene, I wasn't even factoring that in, but of course that is amazing. But yeah, brilliant in both, but Kickboxer just edges it for me.
And in I'm just looking up the songs now because I forget the titles, but there's "Fight to Survive" as well.
Yeah, that's the one.
That's the Bloodsport one. I did think that the music for the comedy chase scene in Bloodsport was very out of place. I felt like we didn't need some sort of Benny Hill music or something. It was kind of like this cool little like sad ballad, and I was like, okay, that's an interesting choice. Yeah, it's a real tough one. That I'm gonna go Bloodsport. I think. I think the idea of the Kumite and the chanting was quite a good idea. I mean, again, both of the songs are really similar. The scores are really similar. You could go either way on these, I think. But I do like the idea of the chanting, and it's more of like it makes you feel like you are there at the event. Kumite, and everyone will know. Everyone can sing that. Everyone will know that when they hear it. They'll go, "Oh yeah, Kumite, Bloodsport, bam, iconic." If you hear "Fight to Survive," if you hear "Never Surrender," you're like, "Oh, this could easily be in Transformers the movie as well." Like there's nothing to necessarily, or it could be in a Rocky film. It's not necessarily specific to that film. So I'm going to go Bloodsport. So that's 2 to Bloodsport and 1 to Kickboxer. Next up is cinematography. Yes, cinematography. Dave, what do you think to the cinematography?
Well, if I was to line these two movies up, I'm going one way, but I feel like I'm going the other way here. So I would have to say Kickboxer. I think it does look better. I mean, I seem to remember either reading or hearing that basically Canon had this script for Bloodsport for a long time, and they also had this annoying young actor, Van Damme, who was bugging them to put him in something, and then ended up just throwing this thing at them, and for me just created gold. But you can tell sometimes behind the camera, where the money's spent. We watched Tiger Claws 3, didn't we, the other month, and behind the camera it looks amazing. So you can see that there's a lot of money spent. But in front of the camera is a different story. But for this one, I think you can tell that there's more talented people behind the camera on Kickboxer, and so I think you don't get the same contrasts. You don't get scenes inside that look overly dark and scenes that are brightly lit. It looks more even and how it should be as a movie.
Chris.
I'm going to go with Bloodsport just to throw a spanner in the works because I love the Kumite setting. I love the fighting. I love the end bit where I was listening to our VHS review and I talk about when they raise the actual mat up, so it's you've got the two ends, which adds a dynamic to the fight with Bolo at the end. I just love all that, the sweat, the Van Damme doing the whole thing when he goes. One of my favorite bits in Bloodsport is when he does actually get blinded. And he's there with the sweat, and he grabs his arm, doesn't he? And then he elbows him and throws him over, and the kicks. It's the pirouette, them spinning kicks for me, so iconic. So I think Bloodsport's shot better, than Kickboxer. I think the fight at the end of Kickboxer is really dingy and dark, and as it should be, because it's an ancient fighting.
Exactly, yeah.
I understand that, but I think for me, I love America. It's that brash, ridiculous brightness, and I just like the end bit of Bloodsport more than anything.
You're the Ray Jackson of the VHS Strikes Back. That's the role you me. Play.
The obnoxious prick.
You say one thing, and you're like, yeah. Listening back to yourself, going, yeah, that was amazing, Chris. Well done. You were so funny. I think what I said earlier kind of colours how I feel. The problem with, I think the Kumite set looks like a studio.
Yeah.
Like you can see it's been built in studio. There's loads of black curtains and black surroundings. So in some way, and because of the heavy lighting, it kind of looks a bit fake. Again, when they're focusing on the fighting and the close-ups, it looks great. But I think outside of that, I think Dave's right. There's not much contrast. Like it's a day shot. Like there's very, very little. Like I don't know who they had on lighting for Bloodsport, but he deserves sacking. I think. There's only that alley scene really where it's kind of dark, and that I think that bit is actually really well lit. That one scene. Because it's dark, but everything else just has this really washed out kind of color palette, and I just don't like it. But yeah, I'm going to go Kickboxer with cinematography. So that's two for it. That's two. That's 1 for 1, isn't it? So this is it. This is the decider. Direction.
Kumite.
This is it. 2 go in, 1 come out. Who will it be? Oh, where are we going to go? Who wants to go first? I'll let you decide, boys.
Age before beauty, David.
Go on then. Twat.
What do you think, Dave? What do we think?
So sorry, what was the question? I focused on that last bit.
It's all right. It is direction. This is the final category. So this is the decider. Who do you think directed a better film?
I think I'm going to have to go Bloodsport. I talked about the emotional kind of ups and downs. How much of that is script and how much of it is director is hard to say. But like I say, I feel like when I watch Kickboxer, there's a start and an end to the story. I don't feel like I need to know anything more. Maybe the American who helps out. Maybe I'd like to understand his Vietnam story or something like that, but that's as far as it goes. Do I want to know anything more about his brother or not? Probably not. But the fact that in the tournament you have these different characters and they feel like fighters, they feel like real people, they have the different styles and everything. And you're I'm interested in what actually happens with those as well. Like I say, I guess with the direction, you've got to factor in the cinematography, which I marked down on Bloodsport. But no, I just think there's more ups and downs with Bloodsport. So I'd have to attribute that to, partially the writing, but the director as well.
Chris.
I'm not going to disagree with David there. It's better when we disagree with each other. I think there's more at stake with Bloodsport. I think with Kickboxer, yes, the fight's great at the end, and you've got the famous dance scene and everything when he's pissed. But other than that, there's not a lot that stands out for me because you're just getting to the point where it's like, well, get rid of his brother because he's a bellend. We need like Van Damme front and center. Even if they do comb his hair forward and pretend he's about 15, Christian Bale style in Batman Begins. But no, I think there's more at stake. I think the directing's better in Bloodsport. I feel like he's in jeopardy, even though I've seen it so many times. I know he's hard as nails, and like you were saying before, super soldier, and he's like the top guy in the US Army. But no, I'm going with that. I think I think the fact that this story has been created, the way it's directed, it just fits what I want in a martial arts movie more than anything. The way Kickboxer's shot, which he's done the year after, even though I think Bloodsport was Van Damme's standout. It was his standout movie.
Yeah.
It almost feels like you could have anybody there. You could have the famous Lauren Avedon in that role. Keith, it's not that far removed from stuff that you watch. It's the same old troop, whereas Bloodsport seems like an original idea at the time. I'm not saying it isn't because we've got tournaments and that, and the Dragon and that, but I think the idea behind FrankDux, and it was supposed to be based on a true story, is what I bought into. It's just years later, it was utter horse shit, but there you go. It ruined the childhood. So I'm going with that. I think it's directed and shot a lot better than Kickboxer.
Well, I don't need to decide, but I will. I have to agree. I think Bloodsport is better. I think my main problem with Kickboxer, as much as I think the story is a little bit stronger in some ways, and the emotional kind of arcs of the characters and the All of that kind of works a bit better. We have a bit more fun with the teacher as well. Jean is a bit more of a kind of a Mr. Miyagi type. I did piss myself where he jumps up and kicks like Van Damme like 6 times in the face.
Yeah.
I absolutely fucking wet myself. I was like, the way they edited that was like,
Yeah.
I was just like, that's fucking hilarious. I rewound it. It was that funny to me. But I think that my main problem with Kickboxer is the pacing. It just kind of like it's about the same length roughly, I think, as Bloodsport, but it felt a lot longer. I was like, right, we're going to see kickbox. Come on, let's see the actual kickboxing now. When do we, get into like? Because I thought it was kind of a tournament-based thing as well. Because I just because I confused the two films, like I'm sure many people did.
Yeah.
I thought it was more of a tournament-based thing, so he would do several fights and get up to Tong Po. But like Chris said, he just like one fight and it goes right. Let's bet $1 million on him to lose. That can't possibly.
Freddie Lee, yeah,
Freddie Lee,
all his money there.
Yeah, voiced by Jim Cummings, the voice of Winnie the Pooh.
Really?
Yeah. So he's been Winnie the Pooh since I've been alive. So it's a long time he's played the character. He's Darkwing Duck. He's a huge voice in animation. He's uncredited in that role, but yeah, look him up. He's amazing. He was the Shocker in Spider-Man and loads of other characters. But yeah, I think purely based on the pacing, and I think maybe the editing could have played a factor in this, and maybe they could have just sharpened it up. I think maybe the script maybe needed to go over another draft, maybe just to kind of cut stuff down and maybe remove some more problematic elements that you didn't really need. But yeah, absolutely, 100%. I think we kind of all knew it was going to be Kickboxer, not Kickboxer. See, I'm confusing him again. It's so similar. We all kind of knew it was going to be Bloodsport. Before we go, I just want to read a few comments. So our friend John Hammond, so at John Hammond 73, I'd have to say, I've asked who's going to win, basically. So he said, I've had to say Bloodsport gave JCVD the career he craved and set the tone for action, fighting movies going forward, plus Bolo Young, of course. And the only thing missing in Bloodsport is this. And he's got a gif of the dance from Kickboxer. So I am Jack's Musings. He posted both of his letterbox reviews. He said, in a tight final bout, Bloodsport wins via marginally less misogynistic depiction and narrative. Our friend Max Byrne, at Max Byrne, he says, Bloodsport, just because his mate, who looks like Hacksaw Jim Duggan.
Yeah, he does.
USA.
Okay, USA. Has no fucking business fighting in the Kumite.
That's the best. I saw that the other day. That's the best description of that character.
He dropped a comment later today as well, and he said, JCVD is great on screen, quotation, martial artist, and has kept himself in great shape, unlike some of his contemporaries. Underrated actor too, singing his praises. Paul Meller, so that's at the Meller Geek, he says, this guy has the maddest death stare. And again, it's a gif of Bolo looking down on him. And then Math on Facebook has said, they are both great films, but Kickboxer was just a poor man's Bloodsport. A lesser villain. Well, not what you guys said. He was a better villain. I mean, Bolo is always going to be the big bad. He's more menacing than Tong Po, and many a times more. I get the movies mixed up, and they both bleed into one, as we've discussed.
Yeah.
Still, late martial arts 80s films are cheesy, but you can't say no to them. Guys, you know what to do. You got to plug yourselves. I am a Patreon for VHS Strikes Back, and I get to choose every so often a couple of films. And I picked a couple of winners this time. I picked the Italian Stallion, the early softcore porno film that Stallone did recently. I will leave that link in the show notes. And you got to see his big hairy bollocks, and that's a unique experience that nobody else has ever experienced, probably. So I think you're blessed to have me on the Patreon, and many people should join me and subscribe and listen, even if they're not patrons. Come and listen to all the good stuff, Comics in Motion, and all the other good stuff. Where can they find you? Should I leave it with Dave? Should I leave it with Chris? Who's better at this?
Well, I will hand it over to Chris shortly, but I do have to, hand on heart, admit, even though I didn't have to watch Italian Stallion again, I did. Because I was just so mesmerized by it, and there are so many iconic bits.
Yeah, I can imagine.
It's just again, it's like this. It's like you have to look at these two movies that we've looked at, and you say they were perfect for the late 80s. You know, they were there because of all the stuff that had happened before, and it led up to that moment, and it was just this perfect melting pot. And that 1970s porno was also the same. And just you think the amount of drugs that everyone was on at the time, and I'm almost tempted. It was the dancing, the naked dancing that I needed to see again. And like Stallone's just like, did you watch it, Dad?
I've not, but I'm.
Oh,
you know what?
I've watched it.
I've listened to the podcast, but now I am interested. So maybe I'll tell you what. I'll stick it on tonight.
Gotta watch it.
Dan.
I'll stick it on tonight.
Fascinating. Very shit. Not sexy at all, but amazing. But anyway, Chris, that is my therapy group admission. So over to you for the plugs.
Yeah, no. Well, also I would say, Dan, if you're going to watch it at 2-speed, because the snide Rocky music is amazing. Because they throw that in there, because obviously it was set in 1970. As soon as he became famous in Rocky, someone went, hang on a minute, that's the same guy. We also called Party at Kits and Studs, one of
Kitty and Studs.
And Studs. So originally, but they changed to Italian Stallion and put the snide Rocky music with the dubbing over it afterwards. So, you know, very clever marketing and business acumen to do that.
Rude.
But shrewd, yeah, very shrewd. So if you do want to actually follow us, guys, on the VHS Strikes Back, on all podcast catchers, it's the VHS Strike Back, or on social media at VHS Strikes Back. We have a reality TV podcast, which is just crazy. And we have that's called Chris and Dave's Reality TV Cast. And we cover everything from Love Island, Married at First Sight, Love is Blind, any old shit that I can get Dave to watch. And he doesn't hate me, because we've done 7 months of nearly doing daily podcasts, sometimes twice a day.
Now.
Yeah, we've had a break from each other for a couple of days, and we feel like we're having a divorce or something because we don't speak. So,
well, I'm glad to have reunited you.
Yes, we're back together. But it is, we've done 7 months of me just winding Dave up going, we've got to cover this. And then people who follow us are like, you've got to cover it. So yeah, we're on there. We're on Facebook, Chris and Dave's Reality TV Cast. And then we've got the Comics in Motion Network on social media at Comics in Motion P. Dan is one of our great friends on there. And we do appreciate your support, mate. It's so nice with the Patreon stuff, even if your movies are fucking dodgy as hell. But that's the whole point. Because the movies we
the other one.
But no.
Well, this is kind of my apology for Necromantic, especially.
That was legendary.
I mean, it was one of my favorite podcasts of all time. But I did still feel a bit bad, and I was like, and as I was watching it, I was like, oh shit, Dave's a veggie, and they're killing a rabbit on screen. Oh shit. Fuck. And then obviously your reaction.
That's all you were worried about. That's the only thing you worried about.
Yeah, I wasn't worried about you, Chris. I wasn't worried about you.
And I watched that Cannibal Bloody Holocaust as well that you were doing because you were covering it.
Yeah. I'm going to avoid any more, if I can, I'm going to avoid any more films that feature some mutilation of some poor animal. I didn't mean to do either of them. I'd forgotten the one in Necromantic. I can't believe I had. I must have like blocked it from my memory for like mental health reasons. But yes, thank you so much, guys. It's been an absolute blast. It's been a long time coming, but I'm honored to have you on, and it's been a lot of fun. And who knew it was going to be such a close race? But we did get a winner. We do have tiebreakers, but we didn't need them, which is good. But yeah, you can find me at spiderdanandthesecretboars.com. So come and join the Prattalion over there. Review, like, share, comment, subscribe, etc. Don't forget to use the hashtag #PrepareForPrattle when you interact with us. And also subscribe to the Pop Culture Collective newsletter to find out what myself, Comics in Motion, and all the other related podcasts are up to week by week. And I'd like to thank my patrons. I am Jack's Musing, Simon Cotton, Paul Meller, Max Byrne, Mike Burton, Angry Andy, Tonya Todd, and Tony Farina. Thank you for your continuing donations. It is very much appreciated and helps Prattle World keep on turning. And if you ever find yourself in a position to help the podcast, please consider it. Thank you, guys. This has been wonderful. Chris, we will let you get back to your football. I know you've stayed probably a bit longer than you should have, but I do very much appreciate it.
No problem, mate. I've enjoyed it, and I believe maybe you'd another crossover at some point.
Maybe.
Get us booked in, Dan. Get us booked in. But
I will.
Thanks for having us on, mate. 2 great movies to pick as well.
Oh, thank you very much. It's been a blast. Have a good night, guys. Take care, everybody. Bye.
Bye now.
Bye.
Hello, Dan. This is the artist currently trading as Derek Esoteric. I just want to let you and your listeners know about a tune that I'm going to be releasing on the 26th of May. The track's called
Teddy Bears Picnic. Blood and tonic.
And of course features you along with many of your guests and some of the wise words they've imparted on various episodes of your podcast. It does come with a parental advisory warning, so to all you Spider-Dan fans, if you are offended by words such as fuck, penis, spanking, Venga or boys, then you probably want to give this one a miss. Otherwise, please have a listen on Spotify or wherever you get your music from, and prepare for some musical prattle.